Coming up today, with tension high over the government's plan to reintroduce state-issued history textbooks into schools, talks between the rival parties over the weekend failed to yield many results. A new North Korean leadership mystery could be brewing. Kim Jong-un's top aide, Choe Ryong-hae, is absent from a state funeral committee list. Plus, with early results expected in the coming hours, Myanmar's army chief says the military will honour the results of Sunday's historic election. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Monday, November 9th here in Seoul. Thank you ever so much for tuning in. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this morning, the floor leaders of Korea's two main rival parties have walked out of talks aimed at clearing the air following last week's parliamentary boycott by the opposition. Ruling Saenuri Party floor leader Won Yu-chul and his opposition party counterpart Lee Jong-gul talked for just over 2 hours on Sunday, but were unable to reach agreement on a number of issues, including the date for the next full parliamentary session. They did, however, agree to hold a parliamentary committee session on the 2016 budget later on this Monday. The ruling party had previously called the committee session on Friday in the midst of the opposition's boycott, held to protest the government's decision to retake control of history textbook publishing for secondary schools. Now, the controversy continues to simmer over the reintroduction of state-authored history textbooks into middle and high schools from 2017. The government confirmed its decision last week, but given the level of opposition, it isn't going to be smooth sailing. Ji Myung-gil has this report.
The biggest concern of those opposing state-written history textbooks is that the current conservative government may include favorable descriptions about pro-Japanese and pro-military dictatorship figures in the books. Therefore, experts advise ensuring diversity and neutrality in the writing process.
I think government should be able to recruit very diverse authors representing different age groups and different ideological orientations. And second, they should have really good guideline, which should be a good lighthouse for writing textbook.
According to the professor, the reason for the government to push ahead with the plan of authoring history textbooks was because it wants to address what it calls predominantly left-leaning content in the current books. Currently, 8 kinds of history texts are available. 7 of them are viewed as liberal, whereas the remaining 1 is considered conservative. Thus, the government wants to correct this by reinstating national history texts. But experts are concerned that this decision could disrupt social unity, as opinion polls published last week by Gallup Korea showed that nearly 50% of respondents were against the policy. With opinions further polarizing over the history textbook matter, experts urge the government and rival parties to deal with the situation in a wise and neutral manner.
I think it's good to still open their ears and then pay attention to the voices from the opposition parties and the civic groups and others. I think in both parties and both sides, they should find a middle ground so that they hopefully they find the compromise between their situations.
Experts said that although opposing stances can be constructive and healthy at times as they create room for improvement, the prolonged standoff over the history textbooks should not continue as it could hurt national harmony as well as unity. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
Now, President Park Geunhye is preparing to depart for a 10-day diplomatic tour from this coming Saturday. Her agenda includes a series of multilateral summits, starting with the G20 summit in Turkey. On November 18th, she will attend an APEC session in the Philippines and then head to Malaysia on the 21st for ASEAN +3 and East Asia summits, both in Kuala Lumpur. According to the Presidential Office of Choe Ryong-hae, the President's participation in these gatherings will help Korea expand its diplomatic scope. And more diplomacy at home today, as President Park Geunhye will host visiting Icelandic President Oliver Ragnar Grimsson at the Presidential Office of Choe Ryong-hae on this Monday. During the summit, the two leaders will likely discuss ways to forge deeper ties and strengthen their bilateral relationship, as well as global issues such as climate change and the Arctic projects. The two countries are also expected to share views on the current regional situation in Northeast Asia and Europe as well. The meeting will mark the first time for an Icelandic president to visit Seoul since the two countries forged diplomatic ties in 1962. Now, North Korea is preparing to hold a state funeral this week after one of its iconic military marshals died over the weekend, and most of the regime's top officials are part of the committee preparing for the event, with the exception of one very powerful figure close to leader Kim Jong-un, which has led to speculation about his whereabouts. Kim Jong-un has this report.
94-year-old Lee Seol, an iconic North Korean politician and military official, died of lung cancer on Saturday. He was part of an anti-Japanese guerrilla movement in the first half of the 20th century. Fighting alongside Kim Il-sung, the founder of the communist state, Lee assumed a number of key posts after North Korea was established, including that of military marshal. North Korea will hold a state funeral for Lee on Wednesday, prepared by a committee led by current leader Kim Jong-un.
He's trying to demonstrate his leadership by paying his respects to those that are loyal to the Kim family and those who are part of the anti-Japanese guerrilla movement.
Kim's close aides are part of the 171-person committee, including Hwang Byung-seo, the director of the General Political Department of the Korean People's Army. But what's striking is the absence of Choe Ryong-hae, the secretary of the ruling Workers' Party. Local media outlets in Seoul are speculating about Choe's whereabouts, including the possibility he's being reprimanded for work-related negligence. Choe, who's known as a second-generation anti-Japanese guerrilla, traveled to Beijing as Kim Jong-un's special envoy to a military parade in September. He also met with Liu In-san, a top Chinese Communist Party official, in Pyongyang last month. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, Myanmar's army chief has said he hopes the result of Sunday's election will build a strong and democratic system in his country. Speaking after casting his vote, the commander promised there would not be a repeat of the 1990 election when the opposition National League for Democracy won in a landslide vote, but the results were not honoured by the military government. Aung San Suu Kyi's NLD is expected to win the most parliamentary seats, although she is barred from being president. Votes are now being counted. The first official results are expected to be issued from around 11:30 a.m. Korea time on this Monday. So we will bring you the latest during our newscast at noon. The head of Taiwan's main opposition party says the historic meeting between the leaders of his country and China over the weekend has done nothing to make Taiwan's people feel safe. Tsai Ing-wen, who leads Taiwan's independence-leaning Democratic Progressive Party, said the people would decide Taiwan's future in elections in mid-January. His comments came as China's top newspaper warned peace was at risk if Taiwan opted for independence. Saturday's meeting in Singapore, the first get-together of leaders from the two sides since 1949. Chinese President Xi Jinping told his Taiwanese counterpart Ma Ying-jeou that they must not let proponents of Taiwan's independence split them. Now, Tsai slammed Ma's performance at the meeting, accusing him of failing to make his people proud or feel safe. U.S. Defense Secretary Ashton Carter says the United States will continue to conduct freedom of navigation operations in the South China Sea, but has given no timeline for future exercises. Carter urged China and other nations to stop their land reclamation and militarization projects in the South China Sea and resolve things through diplomacy. He said the US presence in the region has ensured peace for decades now, which he also said had played a key role in the rise of China and other countries by allowing them to follow their own destiny. Carter added, many countries work with the US to be part of a regional architecture that keeps the peace, and China should be part of that. Tensions between Washington and Beijing have risen in recent weeks after the US sent a guided missile destroyer into South China Sea waters claimed by China. Now, with growing signs the Islamic State militant group was responsible for the recent crash of a Russian airliner in Egypt, concerns are now shifting to its implications for other terrorist groups. Former CI Deputy Director Michael Morell said on a CBS program Sunday that it has become much more likely the Russian plane was brought down by a bomb, following their analysis of intercepted conversations among senior IS members. He said the crash could inspire groups such as Al-Qaeda to conduct similar attacks in an effort not to be overshadowed by IS. Other US officials gave similar assessments over the weekend. Michael McCall, who is chairman of the US House Homeland Security Committee, said all indicators show IS planted a bomb on that airplane, killing all 224 people on board. Back here in Korea, and the country's Defense Development Agency has unveiled a prototype of an advanced radar system seen as key to the nation's indigenous fighter jet project. Now, Seoul had to develop the system on its own after the United States refused to transfer the technology, and there were questions about whether Korea could actually pull it off. Connie Kim has this report.
This is a prototype of the Active Electronically Scanned Array ASA radar system, key to the Korean fighter experimental jet project. The radar functions as the eyes and brain of a fighter jet. The yellow modules act as antennas in airborne operations, detecting and tracking enemy fighter jets and directing missiles. The ASA radar is one of the 4 core technologies the U.S. government barred Lockheed Martin from transferring to Korea after Korea contracted with Lockheed to buy 40 F-35As for the KFX project. There was concern the loss of the tech would slow the project down, but the Agency for Defense Development says Seoul is capable of developing the radar on its own.
We are currently in the last stage of testing this hardware on land. If we proceed with the testing, we can convert it for fighter jet use.
The Agency for Defense Development says technology development for ASA radar has reached 70 to 75% compared to advanced countries. The critical point now is miniaturizing the radar fit for fighter jets. The agency is aiming to have the radar fully developed by 2021. It then plans to conduct more than 100 test flights over the following 3 to 4 years and will integrate it into the KFX project from 2025 to 2028. The agency also said it has completed development of the 3 other key technologies the U.S. government refused to transfer to Korea: an infrared search and track sensor, an electro-optical targeting pod, and a radio frequency jammer. The ADD says it has integrated the technologies into ships and some aircraft, adding that it won't be hard to apply them to the fighter jets. The KFX project, worth $6.7 billion, aims to develop 120 fighter jets by 2025 to replace its aging fleet of F-4s and F-5s. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Now, in some welcome economic news, Korea is one of the most fiscally sound countries in the OECD. Seoul's finance ministry has released an OECD report that shows Korea is one of just 8 member countries that do not need to take measures to maintain their fiscal health. Now, that is quite the contrast to the 14 advanced economies, including Japan and the United States, that need to take action. The report shows Korea's fiscal condition was in good shape even before the 2008 global financial crisis. Now, Korea's debt to GDP ratio rose to 37.9% last year, from 28.7% in 2007. Over a similar period, the figures for all OECD members, on average, soared to 118% in 2013 from 80% in 2007 on average. A Korean research team has tweaked the technology for high-capacity lithium-ion batteries, and this development should enable electric cars and smartphones to run much longer on a single charge. Park Geunhye has more.
Eco-friendly electric cars and smartphones that last days without charging require high-efficiency, large-capacity batteries. Now, a research team from Korea has developed the technology to create such batteries using negative electrodes made of silicon, iron, and titanium.
We developed the alloy using the abundant iron and titanium, and this alloy lasts for much longer than the initial silicon films.
The key to this new technology is preventing the swelling of silicon. Silicon can hold up to 10 times the capacity of carbon rods in existing batteries, but charging a lithium-ion battery with a silicon anode causes it to expand up to 400%. The constant expanding and shrinking over charge cycles causes the silicon to fracture. However, the newly developed alloy does not swell because the research team created it by combining metals that do not react to silicon or lithium. Coin cell batteries with the alloy maintained high capacity and boasted a charging efficiency of 99.3%.
High-capacity batteries that are small and light do not only go into small electronics. We expect them to help advance the wearable and electric car industries.
The researchers are preparing to apply for a patent for their technology, and the study has been published in the online version of the journal Advanced Energy Materials. Park Geunhye, Arirang News.
Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broome. It is Monday. It is pretty cold outside here in Korea, but we do hope your week gets off to a good start. And thank you, as always, for tuning in. Goodbye.